All right, let's dive right into this explainer and decode what is honestly one of the most mind-bending frameworks for understanding existence itself. Today, we're exploring a source text that proposes a wild idea. The universe isn't just a collection of dead physical matter, and is definitely not just a stream of sterile data. Instead, it argues that reality is this incredibly dynamic, self-processing language. We're talking about infocognitive monism and the self-configuring universe. So get ready to completely shift how you view everything around you, because we're about to look at the very architecture of reality. First up, we really need to question a super popular assumption. You've probably heard the sci-fi theory that we might be living in a digital simulation, right? A universe purely constructed of ones and zeros, running on some giant alien computer. But we have to ask ourselves, is that really the whole picture? The source material we're unpacking today argues that this classical, basically engineering-level view of information is way too simplistic. Looking at reality merely as simple bits sets us up to completely miss the mark. We've got to peel back those basic assumptions to reveal the much deeper, stranger, and far more active layers of reality.
Section 1. Is reality a language? The principle of linguistic reducibility.
So because human beings can only ever understand reality in theoretical, linguistic, and informational terms, we have to carefully redefine what information actually is. Now, don't let the jargon melt your brain here. The crucial point is that for information to be meaningful at all, it's got to have structure. It has to have attributes. And to maintain those attributes, it literally has to follow logical rules, what the text calls an attributable logical syntax. Because information fundamentally requires this built-in syntax just to exist as information, it actually possesses the native capacity to process itself. It's not passive data just sitting on a hard drive, it's inherently active.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why the whole simulation hypothesis falls short. The universe is a self-explaining, self-modeling theory. Because information is naturally self-processing, the universe absolutely doesn't need an external computer or some programmer in a higher dimension to run it. It completely contains and processes its own information from the inside. It is entirely self-contained. The code, the processor, and the output are all happening within the exact same closed system.
Section 2. The universe is thinking. From information to infocognition.
Okay, if reality is processing its own information natively, we have to totally redraw the boundaries between physics and the mind. To explain this, the text introduces this term infocognition. It describes reality as a dual-aspect monism. Now, monism basically means there's only one fundamental substance making up everything, and here that substance is infocognition. But it has two aspects. It acts as both the information being processed and the processor doing the processing. They are identical. The data and the mind reading the data are literally made of the exact same unified stuff. Because the universe is constantly processing its own infocognition, the text suggests this results in a stratified form of panpsychism. Panpsychism is the idea that mind or consciousness is a fundamental quality of all things. The text breaks this down into three levels of self-cognition: global, agentive, and subordinate. The global level is the entire universe as a whole. Subordinate might be your basic particles, but the agentive level? Well, that's you. You, sitting there watching this explainer, are literally the agentive level of the universe processing and perceiving itself. Because cognition is essentially just a specific form of information processing that happens to take place in a brain, the text argues that all information processing in the universe can be described as generalized cognition. So the fundamental takeaway here is that if reality is made of this dual-aspect infocognition, then the universe isn't just some cold, dead machine. It is inherently a thinking entity. Reality itself is synonymous with thought.
Section 3. Rethinking information itself, beyond simple bits.
To really grasp this thinking universe, we have to completely abandon the idea of basic binary bits. The classical engineering view, where data is just binary shoved through copper wires, simply isn't enough to explain this. The text actually outlines 3 exact steps to upgrade basic information theory into a unified complex. First, we've got to equip information with transduction, meaning giving it the ability to process itself through infocognition. Second, we have to expand that simplistic bit structure to include the complex mathematics of real languages, like predicate logic, model theory, and generative grammars. And third, we have to generalize all of this back to an ultimate ancestral medium called telesis.
Let's pause on that word for a second. Telesis. Think of telesis as the raw, primordial clay of reality. It is the absolute base-level medium of existence from which all logic, all meaning, all informational content, and all physical structures are eventually molded. Before there's a physical universe, before there's even structured math, there is telesis, this infinite potential that gets shaped into reality through a process called specificative feedback.
The text captures this operation perfectly with a quote, calling it a recursive coupling of information and meta-information or transductive syntax. Wow, okay, that's a bit of a mouthful, but it perfectly describes how telesis operates. It unifies the information itself with the meta-rules that govern and process that information. They're recursively coupled, basically twisting around each other like strands of DNA, creating a living, breathing syntax that actively shapes the physical world.
Section 4. The Self-Configuring Universe. Architecture of the SCSPL.
So how does this entire self-processing system physically generate the reality we experience every single day? How does it actually run? The answer is SCSPL, which stands for Self-Configuring Self-Processing Language. By associating information with these reflexive, self-aware syntactic operators, reality literally becomes a language writing and configuring its own physical code. It incorporates its own model. The language doesn't just describe the universe, the language is identical to the universe. Reality is a dynamic grammar constantly writing its next sentence.
And how exactly does this language write its next sentence? Well, through a process the text calls conspansion. To understand how the SCSPL evolves, imagine conspansion like the universe breathing, inhaling and exhaling. It's a structured grammatical alternation. The universe pulses between two distinct phases, an output phase and a completely hidden production phase. This underlying cycle is what actually transforms reality from one moment in time to the very next.
Now, this contrast is absolutely vital. On one side, we have perceptual reality. This is the physical world you and I see, touch, and measure. It's the observable output phase of the universe's breathing cycle. But on the other side is reality at large. This includes that hidden production phase. It is the underlying realm of telesis and syntax, where the processing actually happens, and it is completely hidden from our standard physical measurements.
Let's bring it back full circle to where we started, the number 2. The source text totally agrees that our observable, perceptual reality can indeed be described by two-valued logic, binary ones and zeros. Meaning, yes, physical reality can be described by those basic digits. But, and this is a massive but, reality at large is so much more than just those bits. The bits only describe the very surface. What you should really take away from this explainer is that the physical world you interact with is just the visible surface output of a much deeper, self-producing language. The universe isn't just the observable bits floating around in space. It is the hidden infocognitive machinery that is actively writing, processing, and outputting those bits moment by moment. It is literally alive with syntax.
Let's end on this thought to completely shift your perspective on existence. If the universe is literally a self-configuring, self-processing language writing itself into reality, and you are an agent of note of that exact same infocognition, what role do you play in the code? I'll leave you to wonder how your own mind, your own choices, might actually be shaping the very syntax of reality itself. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.